Hello, my green skins. Happy Grumpus Day, where we sacrifice five slaves to the great god Grumsh. And today we have, for our very special day, we have ourselves a dark. We have ourselves a new guest we haven't had on the channel. An artist and a hopefully a future producer, Gabriel. That this won't be used for. It won't be used against him if he ever makes it big.
Hello.
Hello. So we are going to be doing a what if Jim Henson never died. This is him, Jim Henson. For whatever reason, a miracle happened. Dreams do come true. The man never bit it. And he is living up to this day. He'd be 91, I think, at that point, but he is still alive, still controlling the Jim Henson network. This is a big one for us in the boys, and we it's kind of going to be a fun one for us. It's something that we do these every once in a while. This is kind of going to be an interesting one, I think, personally. So we'll go into a couple breakdowns here. We'll kind of talk about. First, I'll ask you, Gabe. What was your introduction to Jim Henson's work?
Uh, okay, technically speaking, my introduction to Jim Henson was Sesame Street.
Oh, wow.
Not the Muppets Straight. That was much later.
Yeah. And yeah, you're not from America either, so that's kind of interesting to know that.
Yeah, I'm Chilean, so basically, when it comes to Jim Henson's work, the faster introduction we ever had
Mm-hmm.
was Sesame Street because in that show Kermit the Frog was in.
Yep. And well, Jim Henson himself ran Sesame Street. All those puppets were technically his.
Yep.
And he did a lot of work. Dark, you didn't have much of an inspiration on Jim Henson. You just knew him through the Ninja Turtles. Is that correct?
Pretty much, and even then, I didn't know who he was or what the company was. And
Yeah.
give me a break. I was a little kid. I didn't pay attention to production crews and directors and actors.
Yeah,
At the time.
and we were. Yeah, and I think I just introduced you to witches recently, if I remember correctly. So I introduced you to a couple songs here and there, and some stuff in the background. Jim Henson was known for a lot of stuff. Labyrinth, I think, was something that I believe me and Dark did. Actually, I think we even did a review of Labyrinth. It was he's done some interesting stuff in his years. Now, this comes from a thing about someone actually saying that that's what the Disney deal is what killed his life. You know, and a lot of people feel that he got more sick because of the stress. And Jim Henson seemed like a chill guy, and it was sad to lose him. Like, we were losing him at some of the best. Like, he was doing some of his best fucking work when we lost Jim Henson. This was during the storyteller eras, which I know a lot of people didn't like Storyteller, but Storyteller was amazing for those that haven't seen it.
Is that the show where there'd be a guy telling different stories and he had like a dog on?
Yeah,
Sorry.
because the art was, the puppetry and the shit that was happening for that was epic. Like, I'm still an avid believer that you have to you show your kids this shit. Because it was so well done. I don't know if you, Gabe, did you ever see Storyteller or no?
No, I don't think those are here unless it was on cable, which I didn't have much access to it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I saw that
yeah.
show. I saw that show, but I didn't watch it because, well, this was at the worst time at that point in my life when
They're probably gonna all put us home next week because
when I would
Hey, hold on,
I'm trying to
Gabe.
get my
Gabe, we got you on. Yeah, Gabe. Gabe, someone needs to you need to go like quiet it down in the background if we were getting background noise. Yeah. Oh, okay, so here's what we'll do.
That's his other.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll back it up right to where I
Right.
asked you because we're hearing you're doxing your roommate.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay.
I'll
Okay,
start.
let's keep going.
I'll start what I
okay.
was. I'll restart what I was saying.
Okay.
Okay, so I came across the Storyteller, but that was at the worst time of my life to see it because, again, I was a kid and live action shows did not interest me. I just wanted to watch cartoons. And there was always the odd exception, but my mind was mainly on cartoons. So that's probably part of the reason I didn't sit and watch it. And so, but yeah, Jim Henson, as I said, I do remember seeing stuff in hindsight. Now that I know what works are his, I might have seen them, but again, I wasn't into them. So,
Yeah.
because
Well,
cartoons was my thing when I was a kid.
yeah. Yeah. Fraggle Rock was like something that I actually, when you find out what they did with Fraggle Rock, it's amazing. There's a YouTube channel that talks about Fraggle Rock, and they hit it fucking home. I can't say anything else. You'll have to just look up the Fraggle Rock stuff, and he'll break it down for you. It was one of the most diverse shows of its era. And it's fucking sad that like stuff like this, the storytellers, and they're hard. You can find some of them on Amazon, but they're really good. So we're going back to the past, back to when stuff wasn't woke ass. And Jim Henson is not dead. He is still alive. He made a recovery, and he's standing in front of the Disney contract. What does Jim Henson do? What if is a scenario? Go ahead, Gabe. What if Jim Henson didn't die? What do you think would happen?
Okay, as much as I would love that everything is going to be happy afterwards. Well, yes, he will be the first to say that no to the Disney deal. But the issue is that if he tried to then proceed to a career making solo films and things like that, he will struggle, unfortunately, because if you remember correctly, all his movies, like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal, they were both box office bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, many producers don't
that box office bombs. And it is kind of funny if you think about it. Like, we talked about that. I've actually talked to a couple people about that. How is it movies like fucking John Carpenter's The Thing, which is considered a fucking masterpiece? How?
The issue is that the movie became a classic after decades after its release.
Yeah, Dark Crystal is more popular now than it was fucking when it first came out. Another good example of this is what if. Also, I think Jim Henson had work on the Neverending Story.
Yeah,
these movies would have just it's sad, right?
Yeah, I mean his income, if he was alive, would be either working more on the Muppets or working on visual effects for other movies. But that will change by the time Jurassic Park arrives.
Yeah. And that's the sad fact. We're talking about a big, and it is actually that. So, do you think he might have gone bankrupt? Is that your thought process?
Not really. Not really. The issue is that he will struggle because many companies, such as the Stan Winston studies, are still around. Still around working on.
Well, even though they signed it. Yeah, even though they signed even though they did sign the Disney deal, his problem was that Disney would have started changing what he was doing. He didn't like creative control being taken away from him.
Yeah,
and that was a keep true to his stuff. This is why the Dark Crystal, the sequel to Dark Crystal, was in hot contention. And
Yeah,
it's still
it took almost 30 years to get the sequel, and even then, technically,
a
what
lot.
we got was a prequel.
Yeah, and we didn't get a good prequel from what I've been hearing over the. I haven't watched it because I just feel like, to me, it's the I don't want to change that thing. So, Dark, what are your thoughts? Would Jim Henson's company fail, like Gabriel, or would be suffering the same losses?
I really don't know. I don't know what the filming scene was like back in those days. I mean, I heard jokes of Disney buying out a lot of things. So was Disney buying things at the time?
Disney was actually slowly building an empire. Exactly what it is now, the monster that Disney is now, the many-headed Hydra that needs to be slain, is
Yeah.
it literally became a like this is when it became a problem. You had writer's strike, I believe, at the time. And if I'm catching my time right and my timelines right, you had writers' strikes, you had production strikes, you had these big fucking problems going on in Hollywood, and Disney just walked in and went, "Oh, we're gonna buy all this stuff, we're gonna
Yeah,
feed this soul," and that's what it did.
yeah. They started that trend around the 90s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. If I'm remembering this correctly, again, we do some research. We don't do a lot of research. We're doing this
Yeah.
off of creating our own headcanon. So
Yeah, yeah, but
So
say-
if I may ask, what was the deal with the Jim Henson creature shop? Did he own his the creatures he created for Sesame Street and
Yes.
whatnot, or was he just credited, or was he outsourced a third party to make it for?
No,
A hired-
he
owned.
he worked, he did his own stuff. Now, I'm not 100% sure what he owns on Sesame Street or what he doesn't own on Sesame Street. Jim Henson seems like a guy who would just give it away, and maybe like Jim Henson seems like a motherfucker that would have given that stuff to people. But I will say this, the Sesame Street stuff, I don't know if you've noticed stuff, but in later, especially most recently, Sesame Street hasn't used a lot of Jim Henson's actual other puppets. It's all just Sesame Street puppets. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And
Well, of course I haven't. I don't watch Sesame Street. I'm too old to watch Sesame Street now.
well, I'm coming from it. I'm coming from it from the thought process that you got to have. I'm coming from it from the very simple fact that I'm not watching it as much as I'm surrounded by those who are watching it because family members have kids and friends have kids, and so. And as much as I want to put on fucking Slayer and play some Grand Theft Auto, I don't think my friends would like that too much. So, although I wouldn't mind playing some Slaughterhouse, but I don't want to get in trouble. So,
Okay, so now I understand. It's not his craft that they were after. It was the characters he made that they were after.
Yeah.
Disney.
And here's the scary thing about that, Dark. What have they fucking done with it? Have you seen anything, Muppets? Like, the only thing that came out was they got lucky and got some stuff for Fraggle Rock out. But Muppets have not had a takeoff. And they've basically buried the puppets.
I mean, they got some false starts with those two Muppets movie and that Muppet series, I guess.
Yeah, but that was. I still think that was still under the branding. But
yeah, I mean, the only likely scenario is that the thing with Disney would have worked if Henson was smart enough and make a contingency plan. Like, in case I die, I leave the rest to Frank Oz.
I think he did do a lot. I think like the reason they kind of have separate deals and Disney doesn't have complete control of them is I think he fought for a lot. I would love to see a movie of the last retaining years. I'd love to see a book if someone could actually give us a book of what was going on, I would love to see that. Where I don't think we'll ever see that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I really, he seemed like, to me, he always seemed like someone, I actually idolized Jim Henson as a person, because the motherfucker did it on his own terms. Win, lose, or draw, he did it on his own terms. And he seemed like someone who kept true to his values, and we need more of those motherfuckers, not less.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the
but
thing about
like
Jim Henson is that, well, we can say you can say he had his values and he fought for what he believed in, and he would not give his projects to anyone so easily. But the question is, how long would he have lasted? Because as
I thought,
you may or may not know, they were hounding Bob Ross to sell his name even when he was on his deathbed. So
exactly that.
And that's
they'd have done
disgusting.
the same.
That's mean. Yeah, that's disgusting. I don't know if you know some of the stuff, but they talk about, I believe there's a documentary out about that there's Bob Ross fucking signed $40, $50 fucking easels and shit. Bob Ross was never like that. And, you know, my belief is what would ended up happening is, in my mind, for the Jim Henson stuff, is I think if we go where the company was going under, and because LucasArts was doing big, I think this would have been an interesting thought process. Let's say that LucasArts, George Lucas, pulls his head out of his ass, stops looking at CG, turns around and looks and says, "Hey, yeah, you know what? This would have worked. Hey, Jim, come work for me." And they joined forces. That would have been an epic duel if they would have had.
It could work because Frank Oz already worked with Lucas, and Oz worked with Henson before.
Yeah, and I think that could have been an amazing. Like, imagine if LucasArts and Jim Henson Studios and Spielberg Studios all united under one banner. The fucking content that would have come out, and it would have been so, like, could you imagine Star Wars with less fucking? Could you imagine Phantom Menace with less fucking CG? Could you imagine the sequels with less CG, way more fucking content? Could you imagine, as much as people are like, well, I want CG, fucking no you don't. No, you don't, buddy.
Because as someone who studied animation, I say that CGI works when the production crew managed to mix it up with practical effects.
Yeah,
that's why
you have to have both.
Yeah, that's why as much as we make fun of Michael Bay, especially the Transformers movie, we have to admit that the guy was a master of combining practical effects and CGI, because in those movies, the only thing, at least in the first ones, the only CGI used was in the robots. The rest, practical.
Yeah, but he's also the master of groping and being a fucking pervert, allegedly.
Yeah. And for example, James Cameron, before the whole Avatar stuff, also mixed CGI with practical effects. That's why even 30 years later, Terminator 2, it still looks amazing.
Fucking Terminator 1. You know what? Fuck Terminator 2. Terminator 1 still looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it's low budget.
And again, despite Jurassic Park kind of screw up the whole visual effects department when it comes to the practical, that movie used practical effects as well.
Yeah, but that works great. That's the best way to do it. Some of the best visual scenes, like one of the best scenes in a movie, I still say to this, is Willow, where she screams, "We're all pigs!" and everyone's turning into pigs and shit, and there's some visuals and all that type. It works great. It's fucking perfect. It's so well done. And there are some great... And again, that's the biggest problem I had with Lord of the Rings. There are some effects in Lord of the Rings that just look so goddamn fake. Peter Jackson, the Golem shit is amazing.
Yeah.
And to this day, like fucking the Planet of the Apes movies, like the new ones, they look really fucking good. They're CG as fuck, but they look really fucking good.
Yeah, that's because also the team behind those movies had time.
Mm-hmm. But
Time
that's
to
what
do-
the biggest but that was the biggest problem with Lucas with the previous Star Wars. Also, someone need to fucking smack Lucas over the head a couple times. Like George Lucas, I know he doesn't give a fuck. Like he's upset that what he's seen's happened, but George, if you ever watch this, I think you could do some good stuff, but you're an asshole and you have your head up your own ass sometimes when it comes to story writing. I'm just saying.
That's why he
Yeah.
said Empire was his least favorite because, well, I believe it's because he was more people were hands on it and knew exactly what to improve on from the last movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think though, and that's someone like Spielberg, although Spielberg's getting bad too. Spielberg, Henson, and fucking Lucas creating their own studio would have been that would have stood up against. Could you imagine video games with Henson's fucking puppetry in them? Like,
well,
Lucas,
before that
would have been amazing.
Before you get to that, if you've seen The Phantom Menace before it was changed, yes, even the prequels went through changes.
Yep.
The Yoda puppet was used, and that puppet was worn out and everything. So I think there might have been a point in time when practical effects were getting lazy for one reason or another.
And I think the sad thing is poor Jim Henson. That always makes me mad. Same with the Gremlins stuff. Like I know some people have Gremlins and shit, but like that's movie history, eh? And I can't knowing that the Ewok costumes are slowly dissolving into fucking nothing somewhere. And that is, to me, that depresses me as a human being. I don't want those puppets to ever be destroyed because those puppets are part of fucking movie history. And but back to this, I think if we let Lucas, and that would be my dream team. That would be my movie dream team. I think those guys working together would have been one of the best companies for, I think they could have been more competitive and competed with Disney, which is something Disney needs. Yeah. Disney needs a beast to show up and kick them in the fucking balls as hard as they fucking could.
Yeah, because
who's gonna do it? Warner Brothers couldn't do it in the 90s. And that were their
Warner Brothers can't do it now. Warner Brothers can't do it now. It's sad, but that's the truth. It's like, and I think the thing is, I would have rather seen, to be honest, if I was to say someone I would want to see have his content and have full creative control, would have been Warner Brothers. I'm fucking terrified of Disney owning anything creative right now.
Yeah, because it made them lazy. They need competition in order to go, oh shit, we need to improve.
Well, it's a lot like wrestling. It's a lot like what was going on with wrestling. A good competition can fucking sail the world. Can push content on a level that you'd have great work. Great work is always needed. So that's the best way to do it. So unless anybody else has something they want to add, you guys want to call it here for Jim Henson. That we want you. Our dream scenario is George Lucas, Jim Henson, and Steven Spielberg working together.
Yeah, that would be the best case scenario. The worst case scenario would be the one I described, where Jim will struggle a bit, a lot.
Yeah. No, my worst case scenario's already happened. We have fucking these cocksuckers own fucking Disney owns fucking owns Jim Henson's work. Jim Henson work is falling off the planet, and you could tell a little kid, "Hey, do you know Jim Henson?" And they're like, "Who's Jim Henson?" That to me, that's my worst case scenario. That is my worst case scenario in my life. Knowing that he is fading from the annals of time. That, I know Sesame Street still has him, but we never hear about Jimmy Boy anymore, and I truly believe that that's a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
Knowing that Jim Henson he's fading. Like, this is a man who inspired generation of artists, generations of workers, and I truly think that like,
let's face it, dude. This generation and what's gonna come is not going to be into what we grew up with. I mean, hell, kids today don't even play with action figures or toys of any kind.
Sadly.
sadly, they're losing the inspiration of inventfulness, which means that it's up to us, the generation now, to give them their dreams, and that's not a fun order. I'd rather have kids make up their own dreams than to have someone fucking throw it in their face. And Jim did that. Jim showed that little puppet could be alive. And I'll always respect the guy on that one. So happy Grumps Day, and you guys have yourselves a good one. Like, sub, subscribe. Gabe, do you have anything you want to push?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll leave you guys at this. Thank you so much for being on here, Gabriel.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dark.
Pleasure,
Thanks,
mine.
Dark. Yeah. And you guys have yourselves a very good one. And you know what? I'm gonna quote a famous Canadian. Keep your stick on the ice. All right. See you guys.
See ya.